this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. Is bipartisanship still possible? Our number is 844-4-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Tolliver is here. Hi, Tolliver.
Hey, Jeremy. Hey, listen, man, I've always been bipartisan. I like the Cubs and the White Sox, the Stones and the Beatles, sleeping and napping. You know,
having grown up in Champaign-Urbana, by the way, it was very difficult to figure out whether you should be a Cubs fan or a Cardinals fan. The cities are all... Anyway.
That's pretty tough.
You're bipartisan.
I'm bipartisan.
Well, I've been paying a lot of attention to the news this week, and sometimes it looks like bipartisanship is definitely not possible anymore, like when former President Trump referred to his political opponents as vermin, echoing Adolf Hitler, or when two members of Congress, Jared Moskowitz, a Democrat, and James Comer, a Republican, got into it in a committee hearing.
We can stop the clock. You all continue to, you look like a Smurf here just going around and all this stuff. Now listen.
Mr. Chairman, hold on. If we're not on time, we can
disinformation.
You have gone on TV and said the president did something illegal. You're doing stuff with your brother. The American people have the same question.
It gets to a point, I think, at some point. But the thing is, Tolliver, when it came down to it, the House of Representatives and the Senate ended up passing a bill this week to keep the government open with members of both parties on board. In the end, almost all Democrats voted for it. Republicans were split. So, again, our question, is bipartisanship still possible? Our number, 844-464-3353. And before we meet our panel guest, Tolliver, last week we asked what role abortion could play in how people vote in the next election. So many voicemails, as always. Take a listen.
My name is Heather. I'm calling from Cleveland, Ohio.
My name is Alan Crouch. I'm calling from St. John's, Florida.
My name is William. I'm calling from St. Louis.
This is Marcela from Gilbert, Arizona. My vote would have been Democrat. But since in this election we're voting over abortion, yes or no, I would be forced to vote for Republicans.
I certainly voted to enshrine the right to abortion in Ohio. By the next morning, our Republican legislature was doing all they could to figure out ways to circumvent that. I will do everything that I can to make sure that we vote every last one of them out.
It is going to affect the way I vote in that I'm expecting politicians to represent those of us who do care about life And I'm hoping that there are those who, at the very least, are more toward the middle.
To ban an abortion, period, that's wrong and it's ungodly. Leave that decision for the people. That's all we need to do.
So many great calls. If you were listening live last week, you heard there were some phone problems. That's because so many of you were calling, you were overloading the system.
Absolutely. Not a bad problem to have, though.
And I'm serious about that. Apparently the capacity has been boosted, so fingers crossed this hour as we ask, is bipartisanship still possible? 844-464-3353 is our number. Let's meet our panel guests. Mitch Daniels, a Republican, served 2 terms as governor of Indiana before he went on to lead Purdue University as its president. He left that job last year and is now a senior advisor to the Liberty Fund. He's with us from Atlanta, Georgia. Governor, welcome to the middle.
I appreciate being included.
Well, and Democratic Congressman Don Davis of North Carolina is with us as well. He's in his first term and is a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus. He voted to avert the shutdown this week. He joins us from Greenville, North Carolina. Congressman, welcome to you.
Hey, Jeremy, thank you for having us today, and look forward to join you and the governor for a great discussion tonight from the middle.
Well, and let me ask you first, Congressman, the news that actually matters to Americans this week from Washington is that the government is not shutting down, but the headlines were about sucker punches and swearing on Capitol Hill. Did this week feel different to you there, or business as usual?
It was definitely a different week. Perhaps we've been in Washington, D.C. too long with a sucker punch that took place. We had alleged challenge to fight over in the Senate, and yes, as we highlighted, the wonder world of the Smurfs return, and Gargamel, I believe, returned here. Right. I don't know what was in the water in Washington, D.C., but I can tell you I'm definitely glad to be in Eastern North Carolina.
Mitch Daniels, you had divided government when you were governor, and you've said that if you're interested in results as a politician, you have to work across the aisle, especially if you want to get big things done. So what do you make of the current state of bipartisanship at the federal level?
You described my point of view very accurately. I think if you're interested in results, in most cases, and maybe all, you really have to be open to the idea of working with people who see things a little differently than you do. If you're only interested in scoring points, there's always the opportunity to do that. But whether we had as half our time in office was divided government, half we had a supportive legislature, but in both cases, I felt it was really, really important wherever possible to try to find common ground. Bipartisanship is the only way to achieve things when polities are divided, and it's the way to achieve enduring change, even if one party has temporary control.
So why do you think that it's so hard to find these days?
Each party, I think, when the parties lost control of their nominating process, it seems to me, they drifted into the current situation in which nominations are increasingly controlled by their fringes and their edges, and leaving a lot of people in the middle who feel they have limited or no choices. I think folks who are selected in that way and looking over their shoulder to make sure they keep their offices when they're controlled by an avid or a passionate edge, are much less likely, I'm afraid, to think about results or to look for commonality with people of different viewpoints.
Let's go to the phones. Jay is with us from Overland Park, Kansas. Jay, go ahead. Welcome to the middle.
Hi there. I was just explaining to the person on the phone that I believe I work for a political nonprofit that seeks to be nonpartisan and kind of reach across the aisle. And as I work in politics, I hear a lot of different opinions, and I find that there are still people committed to being in the middle, that there are people who want to find common ground with people from different political parties. But I also hear a majority of people saying, well, I just can't work with people who don't see eye to eye with me on issues. So
and what do you say to those people? What do you say to those people?
I say to those people that I agree with them. You know, I want to be committed to issues rather than party. And I think that I am willing to work with anyone who agrees with me on those issues. So I think that bipartisanship is possible. It's just more of a question of are people able to get past a party label, and are people able to actually work together, especially if they're not agreeing on certain issues?
Jay, thanks for that call. Congressman, I'm sure that you in a purple state like North Carolina hear from a lot of people who feel that way or don't want to talk to somebody from the party that isn't theirs and that they disagree with politically.
Oh, absolutely. I believe it's so important for us to bring civility back to this process. This is about humanity, and the reality of it is, I remember my grandmother always reminded me growing up, looking for the best and that best in everybody. Somehow we forget that in this process. But I'm not giving up. Look, even over the course of this week, with everything taking place, we were still able to get, at the end of the day, to a stopgap to continue to keep the government open for the American people. And this is about putting the people over politics.
Let's go to Bill in Central Illinois. Bill, welcome to the middle. Go ahead. Hi, Bill.
Just a moment. Hi there. Just half a second. Let me turn that radio off and switch and put it on regular phone.
Okay, and go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
We can hear you. Yes, please go forward.
Thank you. I was just making the point that I thought the Overton window had shifted so far to the right with the advent of Donald Trump and other politicians that I'm not sure bipartisanship is possible anymore. The things that they are now espousing and saying, camps to put all the illegals in and deport 11 million people, that your political opponents are vermin, that we're going to exact retribution on our political enemies. These things are such anathema to anyone who is even just mildly center-left, but how can you expect cooperation?
Let me take that to the governor, Mitch Daniels. This is, I'm sure, something we're going to hear tonight, which is that Donald Trump has changed the game here.
Well, the game has changed, and he's been one actor in it, but I think it's not accurate to assign him all the blame for where we are. Both sides have their absolutist points of view. In fact, I think what gave rise to the Trump phenomenon more than anything was the naked contempt that was shown by too many people who would describe themselves as left or center left for the values and the lifestyles and of those who disagreed. Back to Jay's point, you have to hope that people will come to accept the notion that tolerance of another viewpoint does not connote endorsement, and that compromise does not require a forfeiture of principle. I'm back to the term results again, but if your real interest is the public good of the country and trying to move it in whatever direction you believe important, and I have respect for people who hold their views strongly, whichever set of views those are. But if your real goal is to advance those, then you're very unlikely to make much progress by, hurling insults and disparagement at the other side. So I hope that at some point, maybe we need things to get desperate enough, as they were in the case of this near shutdown, that people face up to that more often.
Tolliver, one of the most famous cross-party relationships was the one that existed between former President Ronald Reagan and the House Speaker during his presidency, Tip O'Neill.
Yeah, they were famously close despite their political differences. Here's Reagan speaking with William F. Buckley in 1990 about O'Neill.
We got along, and Nancy and I had Tip and his wife over for dinner. And then one day I picked up the paper and read where he had made a statement about me that was pretty harsh. And I called him. And I said, Tip, I thought we had a relationship here where we could do business together and all, and now I read in the paper that you said, and he interrupted me and said, well, old buddy, that's just politics. He said, after 6 o'clock, we're buddies, we're friends.
Well, to all of our buddies and friends, more of the middle coming right up after this break.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kidd with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
When segregation was the law, one mysterious Black club owner had his own rules.
We didn't worry about what went on outside. It was like stepping in another world.
Inside Charlie's Place, Black and white people danced together. But not everyone was happy about it.
You saw the KKK?
Yeah, they was dressed up in their uniform.
The KKK set out to raid Charlie, take him away from here.
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
From Atlas Obscura, Rococo Punch, and Visit Myrtle Beach comes Charlie's Place. A story that was nearly lost to time. Until now. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We're focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, and philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. My guests are Mitch Daniels, a Republican who was a two-term governor of Indiana, and after that, president of Purdue University, and Democratic Congressman Don Davis of North Carolina. We're asking you, is bipartisanship still possible? Perhaps political leaders in your area have found a way to work together. We want to hear from you. Tolliver, what is that number again?
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Go ahead and give us a call.
Before we go back to the phones, I want to ask our guests if this partisan rancor is opening up a lane for a third-party presidential candidate who could actually get into double digits percentage-wise and shake up the election next year. Mitch Daniels, what do you think?
I don't think it's impossible. I know folks are dismissive of some of this idea, but they're looking in the rearview mirror only. And we're in, to me, an ahistorical moment with unprecedented percentages of people expressing total discomfort with both of the standing parties, which the parties used to compete for the middle, and that's why third parties generally fizzled out. These days, when they are captive to their edges, it leaves a huge opening. Plus, we've never seen a race between two octogenarians before. So you've got a very unique historic situation. I'm not predicting anything. The odds are probably still long, but I don't accept that somehow it's out of the question.
Congressman, is this something that you and your Democratic colleagues are worried about because it would make it easier, for example, for Donald Trump to win the election without independent voters if it's a three-way race?
I believe what's most important is looking at the results, looking at what's been accomplished for the American people. When I think about the infrastructure plan, I think about so much that's been accomplished right here. For instance, in Eastern North Carolina, we see real work on the ground to help get broadband out across rural communities. That makes a huge difference. So I believe at the end of the day, the American people will decide what has taken place. They can see through a lot of, these things and sift through who's who and what's what and who's actually delivered for them. And I believe the people will show up. They'll cast those votes for who will deliver or they feel that have delivered for them. And we know the challenges before the American people right now. Inflation is still real.
Right.
Many people are struggling to put food on the table. So, these are real issues. These are issues that I hear every day from constituents. And I also hear, interestingly, increasingly more people saying they want me to go to D.C. and work to get along. And that's what I've tried to do. And I just want to be clear here when we talk about the middle and what's happening, is it possible? Here's a reality which is not reported in the media. Right now, on the most contentious votes, look at my voting record, 53% actually with Republicans on 55 contentious bills, 302 bills that I've co-sponsored out of 386, 78% are bipartisan. I've worked, for instance, with Zach Nunn. We've worked on 9 pieces of legislation together, and that record expands. And these are issues and topics and policy issues that are not often picked up in the media. So we just have to be honest and real about that as well. There are many who are talking, having meaningful conversations, and are not looking to just go drop bombs. And the unfortunate reality, and I just want to pick and touch on this point, is somehow we've gotten to the point that we are rewarding those who show up to drop bombs and run, to the media and have the loudest voices.
Right. I mean, and it's true. It's true what you're saying, that as you watch the news these days, that often the loudest voices are the ones that get the clips played over and over and over and over again. Let's get to our phones and hear from some of our callers and listeners that are calling in. Robert in North Carolina is with us. Hi, Robert. Welcome to The Middle.
Hey, how you doing? My answer to the question is I do kind of think bipartisanship is dead. But it can be good, in my opinion, if it leads to something else besides our two-party system. To me, that would be a good thing. And when y'all mentioned earlier, there's talk of a mainstream, maybe more centrist third party, called No Labels. If we just had another option besides, Team A fighting Team B, and it's just mudslinging, I think the media kind of feeds the whole negative cycle. And so I just think things are broken. If we had more valuable options, we have Dean Phillips is actually going against Joe Biden, and Robert Kennedy, No Labels.
Right.
Right.
Are you gonna vote for a third party candidate next year in 2024?
Yeah, I'm going to wait to see who they run. I know they're supposed to run a split ticket, Democrat and Republican, but I've been salivating over the idea of having a third choice for decades, at least 15 years. And last thing, our current system is definitely broken, like the gentleman said earlier, but mainly because of the primaries that we have. So the far fringes of the parties end up running against each other. But right now they say 2/3 of the country does not want to see Trump versus Biden. And the fact that it's going to be Trump versus Biden just shows you what a broken system that we have,
Robert, thank you for that call. Let's get to another call. Carly is with us from Salt Lake City, Utah. Hi, Carly. Welcome to The Middle.
Hi.
Go ahead. Do you think bipartisanship is still possible?
Well, I think one of the concerns that the caller brought up previously when they were speaking about just how far right with Donald Trump politics have swung and how it's difficult to find that middle ground because it's weird, or the pendulum has swung so far. I think one of the things I'm really concerned about, and I feel like the governor evaded the question a little bit of that caller, was that when we talk about the people on the far right extremes, they tend to attack the individuals in politics as opposed to creating policy and idea that represents. And one of my big concerns is that if we are just attacking the people involved in politics and we never actually get to the policy and ideas because we're tearing them down, then we're never going to get to the middle. And I feel like at least on the left side, we tend to hear more conversation about the policies and ideas of the right and finding issues with them.
Carly, thank you for that call. Governor, she invoked your name, so I'm going to go back to you on this one. What about the point that she makes, though, about Republicans, she says, going after the character of their political opponents as opposed to the policies?
Well, first, let me point out that I haven't had a thing to do with partisan politics for 11 years out of respect for the public institution at which I worked. I stopped, as a matter of fact, with 6 months to go in the previous job. So to an extent, I'm, I've been a spectator to this. Mm-hmm. And but I understand what the caller's saying, but believe me, looking from a third party's perspective, there's plenty of horrible invective, insulting, and again, contemptuous outlook that's been directed at people who of more traditional outlook. And I think Trump took it as became the expression of their frustration and their, to a large extent, their sense of that they had been looked down on by not just the people on the leftist political persuasion, but the national media and the higher institutions of this country. So, I'm a little more charitable than she might be about the way they have reacted. So I'm not excusing anything that has happened that Trump has said or done, but it's too simplistic in my judgment to assert that somehow he's the cause of all our current difficulty.
Let's go to John in Illinois. John, if you can turn your radio down and tell us what you think. Is bipartisanship still possible?
Bipartisanship is very difficult and maybe almost impossible because the House of Representatives has been polarized because because the majority of the people, members of the House of Representatives, have safe seats. Therefore are unwilling to engage in bipartisan solutions to legislative problems. This is a result of partisan gerrymandering. I live in a district that's been Republican solid for 30 years and will be Republican for another 10 years. I am deprived of a meaningful election day experience, not because there's no Democrats living around me, but because the city has been split in half, where Democrats on one side of the seat and Republicans on the other side of the street, and we're stuck. I think if there were less partisan gerrymanders, right now there's only about 30 seats in the House of Representatives that are truly competitive. If there were 350 or 400 seats that were truly competitive, then the extremists wouldn't be able to behave as they do without being accountable to the people that elect them to office the next time the election cycle comes around.
John, a great point. I want to bring that to the congressman, and I'll just say, Congressman, that one of my favorite quotes from the late Ann Richards, the former governor of Texas, she was on Larry King Live, and she said about the gerrymandering, Larry, some of these districts are so gerrymandered you could drive down the street with both your car doors open and hit every house. So to the point that John was making, though, what about that? How much of that is the problems, these safe seats, the gerrymandering, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, what a legacy with Ann there. But hey, North Carolina, we have just experienced a redistricting process. And I want to explain this to everyone because it's not just North Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina. We can go on across the union. But here in North Carolina, many of our elections are extremely competitive, come down to just a few thousand of votes. And we had a court using special masters to draw the map, and we landed with 14 districts, 7 Democrats, 7 Republicans, and now under the new plan, we're going to 10 Republicans, 3 Democrats, and 1 toss-up. Now, just so happened I'm the toss-up seat.
That's why you're on the middle. You got to appeal to everybody.
But to the caller's point, I've been in elected office from mayor to state senate, now in the U.S. House. And Jeremy, I'm still trying to figure out what a safe seat is like. And but we've operated in this space for a long time, and I can definitely tell you that as you move towards competition in our elections, as we move beyond political partisan gerrymanders and even yet still racial gerrymanders that we tend to see that's out there, it really forces more conversation, competitiveness, and really it inspires members to go and seek an opportunity to work across the aisle and reach out to others.
Hey, Jeremy.
Yeah, go ahead, Governor.
I think John's asked such an important question, and I really appreciate the Congressman's response. Likewise, I take a lot of heart, by the way, from what I understand about the Congressman. I hope he's the first of many, maybe a new generation that has greater appreciation for the problems that our bipolarity is causing. But a couple quick points. I think it's noteworthy that the Congressman has had experience as a mayor and has had experience in genuinely competitive district and politics. That's increasingly rare. And whereas it was clearly assignable, a lot of it, to partisan gerrymandering by both parties in different places, it's less so these days. Unfortunately, we have begun to cluster and to be more homogenous geographically, such that in some places a lot of places I could show you, you'd almost have to reverse gerrymander if you wanted a genuinely competitive politics. In other words, you'd have to draw not compact districts that respected existing lines, but you'd have to actively reach out to diversify the place politically. So, 39 of our states, we've never had this. 39 states today have the same party in charge of both houses and the governorship. Right. North Carolina, notably, is one of the exceptions, and that may explain why they've had a little more bipartisan tradition.
Do you think, Governor, that the model that some places like California use with a committee that figures out the districts instead of the parties that are in power, does that make more sense to you?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm in favor of that. I'm just saying that at this point, you could draw lines that are sensible, that don't trespass existing boundaries, the kind that we've always thought would give us less partisan politics. And you might not succeed. I mean, California is a one-party state. I don't care how you draw the lines. People of the Democrats and people of sometimes from the far left of that party are going to be in charge there.
Right. Let's go to Len, who's calling from Massachusetts. Len, welcome to the middle. Go ahead.
Oh, great. Thanks. First thing, I'm really glad that there's a talk show finally that deals with, takes the stand of being in the middle, because there are just too many talk shows that are on one fringe or the other. And, and I think that exacerbates some of the hostility that we have, going on in this country. Just another little personal note. I ran for Congress myself in 2018 as a Democrat, and I didn't, make it. And when I read about some of the things going on in Congress now, I think maybe the voters did me a favor. I have, all the years I've been following Congress, I have never seen such backbiting. And I know a number of people have called in and say they want a third party, and I don't think that's the answer.
Why not?
When the framers developed, well, the way our Constitution was set up originally, the framers never thought of any parties. They didn't want any parties, but the system was set up in such a way that it encouraged two parties. And the way our whole electoral system works now, it's really binary. If you had a third party, you'd get people getting elected, siphoning off votes from other candidates, and the voters might get a result that they don't want. I think what needs to be done, hopefully, is to get the moderates in both parties to form a more formal coalition and work on issues together. I know it's been done ad hoc.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to be done on a permanent basis.
Congressman, let me go to you with that. You're in the Problem Solvers Caucus. Is that solving problems? I mean, are you having results?
The Problem Solvers Caucus, just to let everyone know, we are a caucus of Democrats, Republicans, equal number, 32 Democrats, 32 Republicans. And I can tell you there's been a lot of positive, to come out of the Problem Solvers, inspiring dialogue. I can tell you it became a little challenging even as we were dealing with the speaker election and vacating the speaker.
Mm-hmm.
But we're still moving forward to forge those relationships and continue to keep the problem solvers moving forward.
Tolliver, there's an interesting stat from the Pew Research Center. Americans who follow government most of the time are generally less likely than other Americans to perceive common ground between Republicans and Democrats in Washington.
That is interesting, and yet people are drawn to the idea. Listen here to former President Barack Obama using the promise of bipartisanship to help launch his presidential campaign. Here he is invoking Abraham Lincoln, who famously said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand."
By ourselves, this change will not happen. Divided, we are bound to fail. But the life of a tall, gangly, self-made Springfield lawyer tells us that a different future is possible.
I'm pretty gangly myself. I relate to that. More of the middle coming up after this break.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world. The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, right, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here with my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
When segregation was the law, one mysterious Black club owner had his own rules.
We didn't worry about what went on outside. It was like stepping in another world.
Inside Charlie's Place, Black and white people danced together. But not everyone was happy about it.
You saw the KKK?
Yeah, they was dressed up in their uniform.
the KKK set out to raid Charlie, take him away from here.
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
From Atlas Obscura, Rococo Punch, and Visit Myrtle Beach comes Charlie's Place, a story that was nearly lost to time. Until now. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. We're talking about bipartisanship. Is it still possible? My guests are Mitch Daniels, a Republican and a two-term governor of Indiana, and Democratic Congressman Don Davis of North Carolina. Our number is 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also reach out to us at listentothemiddle.com, where, Tolliver, what are we seeing right now?
Alan from Longmont, Colorado writes, personally, I used to be able to understand the other side of the aisle on budget and keeping the debt down, but when I see speakers of the RNC saying trans people shouldn't exist and open bigotry being allowed without anyone saying anything, I don't think I'll be able to see eye to eye with them.
Governor Daniels, let me go to you on just sort of that idea, because this is something that comes up not just on the issue of trans rights, but on many issues where people feel like they can't possibly even talk to the other side because their very existence feels like it is being denied by the other side.
Well, I don't quarrel with if that's their impression, then it's certainly injurious to getting things done. If people think that, and by the way, I'm going to insist that there are people of a very different value set who feel equally threatened, put upon, disparaged, and looked down on. And so I think that some resumption of a sense of tolerance, I say again, tolerance doesn't imply endorsement, but we really need, as a starting point to bipartisanship, I think an acceptance that we're not going to agree on some of these questions. We've got questions we better agree on. Somebody just mentioned the debt. It's going to crush this country economically and lead to an enormous social betrayal when we can't keep the promises we've made in our safety net programs. That's one example among others I could offer that we share in common. And I hope for leadership from either side or both that says, look, we're just going to have to understand that on some of these values and social questions, they're too personal, they're too deeply felt. We're not going to berate each other into agreement. Mm-hmm. So let's agree to disagree and get busy on the things that threaten us all.
Let's go to Lee in Wilsonville, Alabama. Lee, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Thank you. True bipartisanship can only occur if two or more sides are negotiating in good faith to try and do something to improve their country or their particular jurisdiction. Unfortunately today, and I've been a Republican all my life now, before I say this, now the Republican Party is not negotiating in good faith. They're lying about everything, including elections. They don't have policies that are winners these days. So they've gone anti-democratic just to retain power. So true bipartisanship is dead until the Republican Party, as it is currently configured, just gets shellacked at the national level.
How do your fellow Republicans in Alabama feel when you tell them that?
They get really, really angry.
Well, maybe some of them are listening right now, getting very angry that you said that. Lee, thank you for that call. Let's squeeze in another one here. Amy is calling from Chicago, Illinois. Hi, Amy. Welcome to The Middle.
Hi, thank you so much for your program. As for the question of the day, is bipartisanship still possible? I believe it is. I look at the history of our country. I'm a national parks buff and have heard so many situations where in this country, in our very country, bipartisanship was crazy. And we survived pendulum swings. So I say thank you so much for your two guests who are both, in my view, moving us toward a solution, and that we need to just keep putting one foot in front of the other and being polite and trying to work things out. And thank you for your
Thank you.
point of view today.
Thank you, Amy. Congressman, I'm going to go to you on that because Amy brings up the history. Obviously, when you think about, and you're an African-American member of Congress, when you think about the Civil War in this country, when you think about the Civil Rights era in this country, things have been a lot worse, it seems, than they are now.
Oh, absolutely. When you look at the strength of the American people over time, historically, we tend to pull together and come together. We may not see it right now. We may not totally feel it right now. I mean, just think the 118th Congress, for the first time in the history of the Union, we vacated a speaker. But I would say that we will come out stronger. Look at where we are today. I just want to point the finger at this. For instance, when I'm not going to say the Texas two-step here, but the Louisiana two-step, we wrote out a continuing resolution that had 2 steps in which we would phase in. That was not a preference of the Democratic caucus. At the same time, there were still concerns within the Republican caucus conference regarding spending levels. But here we are. We are the day after, and the government is still operating, and we're preparing now for families to come together and enjoy, I would hopefully, a great Thanksgiving together.
Yeah, you're joining us from North Carolina rather than being in Washington as you wait to see if you need to vote leading right up to Thanksgiving, which you may have to do in the future. Let's see. Kevin is with us from St. Louis, Missouri. Hi, Kevin. Welcome to The Middle.
Thank you. I really appreciate this show that you're doing. I am responding to a comment that suggested that the reason that we have fringe candidates from each party is because of the way the system is built. But I would point out that that's only true if we have winner-takes-all voting. So, for instance, you have, let's say, 2016 Republican primaries. In many of the early states, you had, say, 3/4 of the people not voting for Trump, and yet he would win states because he had, say, 25% of the vote, and other candidates had 15, 12, 10, 9% of the vote. And at the party primary level would be the easiest way to make a change without requiring legislation to be passed if the RNC and DNC decided to implement ranked choice voting for primaries or approval voting or one of these other methods, then it would favor a more moderate candidate from within the party. And then you'd have, you wouldn't have an election where the great majority of the people didn't like either of the candidates that were on the ballot that had any chance of winning.
Okay, ranked choice voting. Let's go to Mitch Daniels on that one. Does something like that, Mitch Daniels, sound like it would go a long way toward helping bipartisanship in this country, or even just changes to the systems of how we vote?
I appreciate the question. I thought and hoped that that this idea would come up. I think my own answer is that I'm not sure. I'm not sure any of us is. A great advantage of our federal system is that our ability to experiment on less than a national level and find things that work or identify things that sound good but don't work. And I'm very glad, without being sure that it will work well would work well nationally and in practice, I'm very glad that several states are experimenting with it or have attempted it. And here and there, I think it does show promise. So if there's a structural way out, let me put it this way. I already said that I'm just not sure that even the most fair-minded of redistricting will anymore make a sufficient difference, given the demographic trends that we've seen, the clustering and so forth. But if there's a structural change that might materially alter where the status quo, that might well be it.
Kathy in New Mexico writes into us at listentothemiddle.com. If it's true that over half of Americans are not happy about the candidates for 2024, why can we not move toward ranked choice voting to reach a middle? And by the way, ranked choice voting is what propelled Alaska's bipartisan Senate leadership system that is now in place. Congressman, what do you think about ranked choice voting?
When we think about ranked choice voting, I would tend to align with the governor. it's good to continue to explore and look at ways that we can make meaningful reforms. But I think there's still a lot for us to learn and to still, evaluate and assess. There could be true merit in that process.
Let's get back to the phones. Susanna is with us from Silverthorne, Colorado. Susanna, welcome.
Thank you.
Go ahead. What do you think?
Ready for my comments?
I'm ready.
Well, I just want to apologize. I'm not an eloquent speaker, but I think that the one of the byproducts of the gerrymandering where you have the dominant party, trying to create the most advantageous voting systems for them, and then essentially dividing them between Democratic and Republican areas has led to the bipartisanship, because it does not give you much of a choice. If you have mixed areas with both parties represented fairly equally, I think people are more likely to look at the actual candidates, the character of the candidates, the leadership qualities of the candidates, and not just which party they belong to.
Susanna, that was very eloquent. That was very eloquent. Thank you for calling in. It was. You were good. Let me ask the governor actually about that, what you just said there. Governor, what are your thoughts? We talked about gerrymandering a bit, but what do you think?
I think in an ideal world, we would have competitive politics. The Congressman put it well a few minutes ago. Competitive politics incentivizes those in or seeking public office to seek out, or at least to avoid those position statements, postures that antagonize or drive away people, and to seek out those that might bring people together. And I'm back to saying that if one's goal in public life is simply self-preservation, in the world we're in now, you can, if your definition of success is to get off a snappy tweet that breaks through the clutter, well, that's not hard to do. If your goal really is to make change, especially big change, everything in my experience has taught me that big change requires big majorities. You've got to look for ways to bring disparate people together, and that does require settling, almost always settling for less than 100% of what you hoped for. It doesn't, once again, you can pursue firm principles and should vigorously, but if you really want to produce change in the end, you have to recognize that almost never is any victory total, or probably should be in a pluralistic society.
Tommy is with us from St. Paul, Minnesota. Hi, Tommy. Go ahead. Welcome to the middle.
Hey, thank you for having me on the show. I just wanted to comment that, I believe that bipartisanship will forever have to exist, because it is the only way to continue to have tangible results in, gridlock. Like currently, the Republicans had to counteract the narrative that they're just obstructionists, it seems like, because if they continue to shut down the government, they would have suffered some political consequences when it came to re-election. And so, previously they made a huge stink when Speaker McCarthy decided to work with Democrats to keep the government open. But now you're seeing the same thing not happening with Speaker Johnson.
With Speaker Johnson. Sorry, Tommy, I'm just going to let you go there because I think we've got your point there. And the phone's a little hard to hear. Congressman, let me ask you, there's a little bit of hope in what we just heard there from him. I mean, that it has to happen because that's the only way it's going to work.
That is the only way it'll work. Just think of where we are right now in the 118th Congress. You have a Republican-led House, a Democratic-led Senate, and obviously in the White House, a Democratic president. It's impossible with that dynamic, with a divided government, so to speak, for anything to take place. So it takes effort at the end of the day, all of us pulling together to some extent to make it happen. And I want to go back to what an earlier caller pointed out. And the earlier caller talked about the policy as opposed to the individual. And I want to come back to Representative Chip Roy, went and kind of called out the Republican conference, by having not significantly accomplished much this Congress. So I would say absolutely the only pathway forward is through bipartisanship. And what part of bipartisanship looks like, at the end of the day, no one's going to be 100% happy.
Well, and let me ask you, Congressman, because just briefly, is there something big that you see happening in the next year that you think there'll be bipartisan support for now with this new speaker in the House? Will there be any, something like the infrastructure bill that passed a couple of years ago or something big?
I would definitely be hopeful and optimistic that we could get at least through the appropriations process. I think that would be huge for the country, and just as it was. And I mean, this is not underscoring the significance of just getting through another continuing stopgap, another continuing resolution. So I'm optimistic there's some possibility in all of this. Let me, if I may, make one emphasis on one landmark that is important to me, and I think the American people, if anything, it should be the Farm Bill, making sure we get a good bipartisan Farm Bill out the door.
You can be sure that the middle is going to do an episode on the Farm Bill. Erica in Utah writes to us, I believe bipartisanship is possible, but it can't happen without individual citizens being brave and listening to folks whose views they might consider dangerous, immoral, or repugnant. Governor, just 20 seconds, your thoughts on that, and hope for the future if you have any.
Bravo, Erica. That would be the best way. I've resisted the idea that there's a cliche that says that we'll only act on our big problems in a bipartisan way when we're forced to by crisis. I'm afraid that might be right, but we're going to have a crisis or two. And when it happens, I hope that we will rally, as we've seen our Americans, despite our differences, do so often in the past.
Okay, before we close out this hour, Tolliver has a quiz question for our guests. Tolliver.
Absolutely. I have a multiple choice question for you. The winner gets a hat from the middle.
Oh, now we're making hats. Okay,
exactly,
go ahead.
Exactly, every single week. Thomas Nast, a German immigrant and political cartoonist, conceived of the Democrat donkey and Republican elephant in what years? 1776 to 1780, 1870 to 1874, 1886 to 1890, or 1933 to 1937. Donkey, elephant, 1776 to 1770, 1870 to 1874, 1886 to 1890, or 1933 to 1937.
Governor, Congressman, any answer there?
Yeah, well, it's B or C, and I'll go with C.
You're going with C, 1886. Congressman, what about you?
I was going to go with B.
Well,
B is correct.
B is correct. Okay, the Congressman wins. All right. Well, thank you so much. I want to thank my guest, Mitch Daniels, a former two-term Republican governor of Indiana and former president of Purdue University in beautiful West Lafayette, Indiana. Governor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And Democratic Congressman Don Davis of North Carolina, a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus. Congressman, thanks to you.
Hey, Jeremy, thank you so much for having me. And I think I'm going to share that hat with the governor tonight.
Amazing. Okay. And by the way, Tolliver, as you know, we have a weekly newsletter that is free and people can sign up to get it every week at listentothemiddle.com.
Yep. We also have a podcast. It's available in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts.
The Middle is brought to you by Long Nook Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Joanne Jennings, John Barth, Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, and Charlie Little. Our technical director is Jason Croft. Our theme music was composed by Andrew Haig. Thanks to Nashville Public Radio, iHeart Media, and the more than 370 public radio stations that are making it possible for people across the country to listen to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. Talk to you next week.
Over the last couple years, Didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Saturday, May 2nd, country's biggest stars will be in Austin, Texas at our 2026 iHeart Country Festival presented by Capital One. Tickets are on sale now. Get yours before they sell out at Ticketmaster.com. That's Ticketmaster.com.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather. In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to everybody.
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'm going back to my hometown to uncover the truth. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.